Thank you, colleagues. I'd like to say welcome to this extraordinary meeting of Cheltenham Borough Council, and to welcome those in the gallery and those watching online. We obviously do have a formal agenda ahead of us and some quite important decisions to take. But before we move on to that formal agenda, I think it's appropriate to take a moment to just reflect on a really much loved and respected colleague that we lost very unexpectedly last week. Paul Jones first worked for this council as an apprentice at the age of 16. He rose to become Deputy Chief Executive and Finance Director and other statutory positions, including Section 151 Officer and Returning Officer as well. And in many ways, as the Finance Director, he was actually the architect of this council's current financial stability, and the whole town is in his debt for that reason. Now, I've known a few finance directors in my time, and they can be quite dry and quite formidable. I have never known anyone who carried out that kind of function with as much good humour, as much sheer warmth, and as much humanity as Paul Jones. And I'm sure we all feel that shock and that sadness at losing him so suddenly and unexpectedly. And if we as elected councillors feel that, I cannot imagine how his family feel and how his immediate colleagues within the council team feel as well. And the leader has told me that she is going to add to next council meeting's agenda in December a special item, which will give everybody the opportunity to, after we've perhaps consulted with the family and given them a moment, everyone will have a chance then to make their contributions and say their piece and say how they remember Paul. In the meantime, there is a book of condolence open in the Cambray room, and there's going to be an online way to remember Paul as well. Right now, though, I would ask you just to rise, and we'll just all take a moment to reflect on Paul Jones. Thank you, colleagues. Beg your pardon. Leaders requested a short recess now, and if we resume at 22, that just gives a moment for people to just pause and collect their thoughts before we get onto the formal business of the day. So Thank you, colleagues. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Right, we'll proceed with the meeting now. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation, and the footage and recordings will be held by the Council for 5 months. Please also note that a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, you should make your way to the nearest fire exit immediately. Apologies. I have Councillor Steve Harvey, Dr David Willingham, the Mayor, Councillor Julian Took, Councillor Graham Beale and Councillor Julia Chandler. Are there any other apologies for today? No, okay. Item number 2, declarations of interest. And just for your information, for the purposes of the debate on local government reorganisation, being a county councillor does not count for these purposes as a registrable interest. So you don't have to declare that. But are there any other declarations of interest relating to any other item? Nope. Okay. Number 3 is minutes of the last meeting held on the 13th of October. Are there any amendments to the minutes proposed? Nope. I invite, in that case, members to give me a show of hands. Those who approve these minutes as a true and correct record, please show. And that is passed overwhelmingly. Thank you. I will just take a moment to sign those. Thank you. Okay. Communications by the Deputy Mayor. Well, I would like to say I've been to a few events, some of them on behalf of the Mayor. I'll just pick out a couple because we're short on time. One was the 170th anniversary of the Cheltenham YMCA. At this rate, it may outlast Cheltenham Borough Council. And it was a really extraordinary and moving event. It's a fantastic local organisation, and the scale and the breadth of what they do was really, really striking. It's a lot more than just a phone line. 8th of July, there was a fantastic celebration at Pates Grammar School of Diwali. It's actually now one of the largest Diwali celebrations in the country. And it was an extraordinary display of dance and a lot of cultural diversity on show, and it was a really fantastic event. But I think the highlight for me, just recently, was only last week, which was a climate conference held in this chamber, which in the first half emulated the current Conference of the Parties, the COP, happening in Belém, and which is the global attack on climate change and trying to bring together nations from all over the world to tackle this existential threat to humankind's place on this planet. Our generation may not have succeeded terribly well in that task, but on the strength of the amazing inputs from schools and young people in that climate conference last week, I'd say the next generation is looking very promising in taking up that challenge. And I was very pleased to see Councillor Pinniger representing this council in his climate brief as part of that that occasion. And it was a very moving, very powerful occasion, and it got down to some very tough questioning at the end, I think, which both he and I had to face. Looking at the rest of the agenda, I should also let you know that I've accepted 2 items of urgent business which will be added to the end of the agenda. One on the basis of some very recent legal advice that we have to deal with a planning matter. Councillor Collins will explain about that in due course. And the other, sadly, relating to the item we started with, is that we have now, unfortunately, sadly, an urgent need to appoint an electoral registration officer. And that will be explained in due course as well. Number 5, communications by the Leader of the Council, Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I'll keep it short, really, relatively short, let's say. But I thought it was worth sharing with members. I've recently met with the trustees from the Lido, and it's always great to see voluntary organisations and particularly that our much-loved Lido go from strength to strength. but just some of the facts that they gave me that I thought was worth sharing with you, that this year, their 2025 was a record summer season for them, and they had almost 300,000 visitors to the pool, 3,261 season tickets, and then the very popular dog swim. So 1,890 dogs at a dog swim that raised £23,000. Their new car park, 143 public parking spaces, 27 bike racks and 8 EV chargers. And they now staff 8 year-round, 110 seasonal workers, including winter season, in the region of 285,000 of seasonal pay, which is a lot. So they work very hard for the income that they get. So, and one of the things that I'm proud that we were able to support them in is, most of you, I've no doubt, will have seen that, you know, the solar car park is completed, which was at the cost of 1.2 million. And a year of learning, but so far what they tell me is that they are now 65% self-sufficient, and any excess is exported at a favourable 15p per kilowatt. So really, if any business fits with PV panels, the Lido absolutely does. And then I attended every year we have our annual parish council get together. So it's not just Cheltenham's parishes, but it's those that border us as well. And there are a number of things that are discussed at that, but for obvious reasons, this time focused very much on local government reorganisation. Martin was there, Victoria was there, Mike was there, I was there obviously as well. But I just thought it was worth updating council on the fact that there is a degree of nervousness and uncertainty. We think we're uncertain because we don't know what the government's going to do, but equally, you know, what is the implication in reality for parish councils? Because to a large extent, at this moment in time, the government have given no indication as to what's to happen with our parishes. But given that they're our local voice, and the very, you know, we're very much our party is very much about bottom up. So it's really important that we engage with them to keep them knowing. So the last council meeting we had, you'll recall that I brought the community governance review and put it through to its second stage. And I thought, you know, whilst you might think 101 responses is not a lot, actually it really was very good response that we got. When you look at how people respond in that first tranche of consultation, because it's very much a blank piece of paper. We're not saying anything, we're just saying, do you want to think about this? And giving people the option. So I just thought it was worth sharing that the timeline after that up now has shifted, because actually the response that we got will need 5 full-on reviews, questionnaires to go out into that second consultation. So we've got a complete review of the boundaries of Swindon Village Parish and Prestbury Parish, including Wymansbrook, to establish which parish it should sit in. We've got to complete a full review of the unparished area between Prestbury and Charlton Kings to understand if it should be incorporated into one of the already established councils. And we also will need to consider setting up a new parish for Ben Hall and the Readings, because that was one of the requests that came in. And we've got to, and then there will also be, we've got to complete a full review of Leckhampton and Warden Hill Parish to understand whether the existing parish should be extended and or should be separated into 2 parishes. So, you know, just by reading that out, I'm guessing people will realise that that's a significant amount of work that we're going to have to do before we can go out to stage 2 consultation. And again, we won't be going out with such a blank sheet of paper this time, because people have told us what they think they want, and we will be able to articulate that for people to really look at and think, what do they want to happen? So where the timeline, so May this year, we approved the terms and conditions, of reference for that first stage. And then between May and July, it was out to public consultation. August to September, our officers reviewed what came back to us. And then on the 13th of October, we approved that to go out to the stage 2 of the consultation, or stage 2 of the review. And then from the 5th of January to the 27th of March, that will be when the second public consultation happens. And then April to May, that will be reviewed again with what comes back by the Officer Working Group and the Working Group, should I say, to bring forward the development of the final recommendations. So we haven't yet, it's likely to be June that it comes back to full council for with the final recommendations and for this authority to vote on that. And then, dependent on those results of stage 2, that's when the reorganisation order is made, which is what it's called legally. So I would, as I did last month, please, all of you, as the local representative councillors, when that consultation period comes out, do use your contacts, do use what you do, and knocking on doors and saying, what do you think of this? It's really important that we get as many people as possible to feed back into that consultation to make it of value. I think at that point today, Deputy Mayor, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Leader. And as the Leader said, I was at the parish council event as well. And I think on behalf of all the parishes there, I think there was a strong feeling that it was really appreciated that this council is taking such a consultative approach to their level of government, at least, and that level of reorganisation, potentially, which is much appreciated, I think. Item 6 is to receive petitions. I'm not aware of any petitions. Item 7 is public questions, and we have 5. And the first question is to the Leader, and it's from Mr. Newman. Mr. Newman, would you like to take the microphone? Your initial question is taken as read, but by the look of you, you look as though you're about to ask a supplementary.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, so there we are. Yes, I do have a supplementary. Hello, councillors, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Is that too loud? Right. I thank you, Council Leader, for your thorough response to my question. Right, okay. I thank you, Council Leader, for your thorough response to my question. I think we can agree that none of the 4 points you raised from the District Council analysis display the will of the people either to remain as one county or to partition us in half. As you've said, I have stood for election in this town, and therefore the will of the people of Cheltenham is a priority to me as it should be to you. With this in mind, as well as the clear disagreement amongst the councils themselves, does this council agree with me that more consultation with the public is necessary before partitioning the county?
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Newman, for your response. There will be consultation, but it isn't up to us how that consultation is done. The government have clearly said 28th of November, so earlier this year, we had to put in an expression of interest in the first place. And then since then, we did that. 28th of March, the government came back and said that that's what we're going to do. You put in your expressions of interest, we will decide, and then we will go. The government will go out to public consultation. And even that, at this moment in time, the government have not been clear about, they've absolutely categorically said they will be consulting with statutory partners, but those of us that are local know that actually statutory partners go well beyond the health and the housing or the health, police, etc. So, and what the government have said is that the members of the public can contribute and feed back on the proposals that have been put out there. But what they're not going to do, I think our chief executive said earlier, is they are not going to get, and I thought it was a very good description actually, they're not going to come out on a roadshow to each and every town in the country. So, those that are interested, it is down to us, again, as councillors, to actually put that argument forward and encourage our residents to do so.
Thank you, Leader. Mr Newman, you had question number 2. Do you have a supplementary on that one as well?
Hopefully my microphone works better this time. Right, so question 2. I thank you, Council Leader, for responding to my question, both the one just now and this one, regarding the continuation of assets of community value under a new council. You directed me to ask this of the new council when that election happens. With this in mind, this question is regarding what legacy Cheltenham Borough Council will leave behind. As I suspect, in the eyes of the public, it will be this council having overseen the selling off of Gloucestershire Airport and this very municipal office building that we're stood in, and of course the closure of the Swindon Road tip, so many cafes, restaurants, and very sadly, soon to be the Bell Inn.
The question is, Mr Newman, can I just say, your supplementary is supposed to relate to the original subject of the question, which is assets of community value, which is a technical description of certain things listed within the borough. Do not include local businesses or Gloucestershire Airport. So
I was going to ask,
could you ask your supplementary in relation to the actual original, please?
I was going to ask, what would you like the legacy of this council to be?
Thank you. Leader.
Well, I'm sure we can share that legacy. What I want to do in terms of our residents, and that I've served for over 20 years now, is to make sure that we carry on doing what we're doing and we hand our authority over to whatever comes next to be sustainable into the future for that future government or that future council, whatever that might be. That's what I'd like.
Thank you, Leader. Question number 3 was from Elliot Craddock. Mr Craddock, do you have a supplementary question? Yes, you do.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'll start by thanking the leader for her thorough answer in my email. Firstly, I'm pleased that, certainly on the surface at least, you and I share the same goal of keeping the costs down for the people of Gloucestershire going forward. In your reply, you did criticise models as, quote, a collection of assumptions and estimates, which I thought was a slightly odd criticism, especially as later on you go on to quote something which, in your own admission, was anecdotally evident. But your main argument seemed to just boil down to the idea that one council would be too slow-moving to really deliver for the people of Gloucestershire. So from that, it seems like you're implying that one single authority with all the expertise within one organisation will be less efficient than having two duplicate councils with identical functionality. Am I correct in thinking that's your implication and assumption? Thank you.
I think no, you're not correct, because at the end of the day, this is about what we believe is best for Cheltenham, and in the wider context, therefore, what we believe will work. And we will be one of the very, very few, in fact, I'm not sure that there are any other huge big councils that have two significant urban areas as we do in Gloucester and in Cheltenham. And if you think one big council is going to which one of them, they're going to be constantly competing when they're applying to government. So whatever that council is, they're going to have to make that argument as to why it should be something that's happening in Cheltenham. So GVR, or in Gloucester, the Forum, as an example. And I think one of the things for me is that we've very much put this together. And I haven't done this in isolation. It isn't just my decision. I've taken the mandate to drive this forward, that Cheltenham believes that the two is what is needed, based on the fact that actually this council said that the expression of interest that went forward was for two. And I think it boils down to me fundamentally about local democracy. If you think of one authority, there'll be sort of the representation. So in my ward, as an example, or some wards, you've got 5 councillors currently between district and county. They will go down to 2 representations. So each of those councillors will be representing 4,500 people. For me, that's a long way away from being able to communicate efficiently with your residents, because something I've maintained all along. This to me should not be about local government reorganisation. We've got a 50-year opportunity to look at it and say that actually, how can we deliver public services better to our residents? And I will always and I make no apology for the fact that I fundamentally believe that bigger is not better and that you need to be as close to the people that you represent as you possibly can.
Thank you, Leila. Question number 4 was from David Redgewell. Now, is David in the chamber? Where? Oh, sorry, David, I didn't spot you there.
So, if you can hear me.
You have a
So-
supplementary?
Yes, I do. I've just heard that, and I'd like to ask a supplementary question. Gloucestershire as a county has been around for 1,000 years. It lost in 1974, Bristol and South Gloucestershire County Council. It's been a very large county. But it provides a large number of public services in this town. This is a town of only 120,000 people. Very small West Country town, really. It bounces like Bath above its weight, but it's small. So I'd like to know how the splitting of this historic county in half is going to provide decent bus services across the county, which are provided by the county council, how we're going to provide health services, social services, fire services, which are all provided on a county-wide basis, roads and highways, splitting a county in half, having 2 directors of social services, might work with housing, which you sold off anyway and brought back. You privatised and brought back.
David, I'm going to have to
So the
remind
point
you
I'm
this is
trying to
a
make
supplementary
is,
question.
the supplementary question is, how does it work splitting Gloucestershire in half when a large number of public services are provided by the county council, some of which are provided across the southwest, like the ambulance service and other services, and of course the police and crime commissioner is going to the county council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leader.
So is the question, Mr. Redgewell, one that says how does it work splitting it?
Yes.
If I start on the premise of the fact that actually we are already split in 7, we've got one county council that has statutory functions. You have 6 districts that deliver all the rest of the services. So we are already split. And if I take us back a few years, actually, haven't we got something called, South Gloucestershire, just down the road, which used to be part of Gloucestershire. So we know it's been done. And I think in terms of social services, you're right. I mean, they're very big and there's a huge concern over actually the effectiveness at the moment of adult social care, as I'm sure you appreciate. But at the end of the day, the cost of the disaggregation, which is what you're talking about, and other counties have done that. And funnily enough, when the government made the decision on the split that Surrey put forward, they didn't take anything forward that Surrey wanted. They said, actually, no, we've decided this. And they did that on a financial basis, in my opinion, of the fact that actually Woking got a huge debt. The other 2 parts of Surrey had lesser debt. They're still going to start off in debt. So they've got to go through a disaggregation cost of splitting all those services anyway. And I'll go back to something I said. To me, this is about public sector reform. Why can you not look at it differently? Why can you not look at the fact that you don't have to have necessarily 2? I mean, if I use an example, Mr. Redgewell, of the fact that actually we have an enormously successful Ubico company that is actually serving now the whole of Gloucestershire and beyond Gloucestershire. All of us as councils pay into that. Now, the goal that the government set is that you become one unitary or you go to unitary, and then, of course, the carrot is that you'll get an elected mayor, which, you love them or you hate them, doesn't matter. I'm not going to express my personal opinion right here, right now. It's probably most well known to most of you. But so what the government has said, oh, hang on a minute, we haven't got enough money to do this, so we're going to pause that. Anybody who's currently in the system to get an elected mayor, that's likely to happen. But as far as the rest of us who are not in that mix at all, then there is no carrot at the end of the table to say. So I would beg the question of why are we actually even going through this? Because there's nothing at the end of the tunnel for us or for our residents.
Thank you. And question number 5, Mr. Redgewell, was also from you, and it was quite
Supplementary.
wide-ranging. So if I can ask you
No, I'll
to
be
be
quite
reasonably
straight.
precise in your supplementary, that would
Yeah,
be great.
so
Thank you.
we've just touched on the issue of the greater goal. So Gloucester City Council and the County Council have held discussions and expressions of interest with Mayor Helen Goodwin about joining. They have actually met, and Chief Executive met. I was in the room with one of them. So the question really is, this is a West Country town. It looks west. It doesn't look to Birmingham, that's for sure. BBC put us into Birmingham. That's a different matter. But so has Cheltenham held any conversations? Because there is a big prize about transport, investment, GCHQ, economic development in this town, with the West of England Combined Authority or any other combined, or made the case for having an elected mayor that may produce as a rapid transit system from Cheltenham, which I fully support, to Gloucester and beyond. So has any conversation at Chief Executive, because other councils, including Stroud,
Thank
will
you.
actually have the conversation.
Thank you, David. Leader.
Yes, Mr. Ridgewell, I think is the answer. I'm not going yes, there has been discussions. And they've formed part of, and if you look in the 700 odd pages, we have talked about that. And without a shadow of a doubt, and I've been very public about this, and again, I've taken this council with me, is that from an economic point of view, West of England is where we want to join. We have clearly expressed an interest in actually saying that's the direction of travel we want to go. Because actually, I'm not saying Hereford and Worcestershire and Warwickshire would be the wrong direction in some respects for us, because we've got a rurality connection. But actually, in terms of an economic driver and our integrated care health board, that way, also the police service. So we've got a natural road, as it were, but that's not my decision. But we have talked about it.
Thank you both. Right. Item number 8 is member questions, but no member questions have been received. So we now move to item 9, which is the Cheltenham Borough Council (Markets) Bill. Reminds me of somewhere. And I'll ask Councillor Tailford to introduce this item, please. Councillor Tailford.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. This feels slightly, with everything that's come before and everything that's come after, it feels like a bit of a damp squib item, but it's something that we have to bring here today because we have to progress it in time to get it through to government. So obviously markets are a hugely important part of our town. They promote economic and social well-being. We have markets almost every week, whether that be in the town centre out there, along the prom, or in the community, for example, the Suffolk, which I'm sure we've all been to, and it's a lovely market. We also have summer fetes across town, all sorts. And there's a strong desire among members here and officers for street trading to continue, given these economics and other benefits it brings to Cheltenham. However, owing to Section 83 of the Cheltenham Improvement Act 1852, it is an offence for a fair market mop or hiring and other related activities to be held upon the high street or any other street within the borough of Cheltenham. Licensing of markets is therefore, as you can imagine, quite problematic. Members would have noticed that, notwithstanding Section 83, these markets do continue to operate in Cheltenham. But this is because officers have to license individual traders rather than being able to issue a single consent for the whole market. That's not a sustainable or cost-effective licensing approach, as you can imagine. So instead of just issuing this one consent, they have every single stallholder amounting to hundreds of consents annually. This comes with a huge administration burden on both the officers and the market operators, and with this, increased costs for the authority every year. It is therefore necessary to council to act to address the problem Section 83 creates. In July 2023, council approved a resolution to start the process of repealing Section 83. Since then, work has been undertaken to prepare for this, appoint the necessary parliamentary agents, and undertake consultation and prepare the bill. So today, you're asked to approve the final and required stage that will enable the authority to deposit the Cheltenham Borough Council Markets Bill to Parliament. As outlined in paragraph 2.8, the bill will repeal Section 83, apply Part 3 of the Food Act 1984, which is much more recent, to any market in the borough, and introduce a power for officers to issue a fixed penalty notice to any person believed to have committed an offence against bylaws to be adopted. The important thing is Part 3 of the Food Act 1984 provides the legal framework for local authorities whether that is us or a future local government reorganised unitary authority to establish and manage markets. It grants the powers to create new markets and set out rules for market operations, including setting market days, hours, charges, as well as the authority to regulate sales and enforce rules through bylaws. By simplifying this process, we can also free up time to create a tailored approach for markets to better fit our town going forward. I think we all want our markets to be as best as they can, to support our businesses better, to work together and create better harmony in our town centre. And members will note from the consultation outcome, the majority of respondents are in full support of these proposed changes we're seeking to implement. Private bills must be deposited in the House of Commons Private Bill Office and House of Lords on or before November 27th each year. If it's not deposited before then, we'll have to wait until November 2026, which would be a year of floundering while we wait for it to happen. So as you can imagine, despite all the other important things that are going on, it's important we get this through today as well. So I therefore commend the report to members and ask you to support the recommendations to enable the authority to move forward with this essential work. I know this isn't a big ticket item, but if you do have any questions, I'll answer them as best I can, but we also have Louis and Sarah here available to answer any technical or legal queries you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Telford. Are there any questions to Councillor Telford, first of all, before we move to debate? We're all wowed by the technical explanation of the parliamentary process, I'm pleased. Okay, in that case, we move to debate. Would anyone like to speak either for or against the recommendations in this report? Councillor Wheeler.
As Chair of Licensing, I guess I ought to say something. Markets and market traders don't often come to committee. That doesn't mean to say that our officers don't have to do much. I know our officers have an awful lot of work to do with licensing alcohol, SEVs, taxes. They have a lot of work on their hand. If they've got to handle individual licenses to everyone, every person that wants to have a licensing stand, as opposed to just issuing one license to a market, it's going to make their life so much easier. And I personally cannot see any reason why we should have to license individuals when we could be licensing whole markets. So I'm very much in favour of this action. And repealing something that goes back to the 1800s seems altogether sensible.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thank you. Yeah, it is quite bizarre, isn't it, that we're here in 2025 discussing an Act of Parliament going back to 1852, which we've still been obeying every year since, and the huge amount of bureaucracy it creates to our officers. And actually, the bureaucratic process we have to go through now to actually withdraw that through an Act of Parliament, which has got to be there by the 27th of November. I mean, it's just sometimes we're still in the dark ages. But in terms of markets, I think we would all agree markets are a huge bonus for our town. They're a real positive to our town, to our high street, to our promenade. So absolutely supporting this. But I think as a consequence of this, when this hopefully does go through, we will have more control over our markets in terms of where they go. I think there is a danger at the moment that all our markets tend to go to the same part of town all the time. And I think the opportunity to take the market to different parts of the town will be a bonus to those sections of the town and take less pressure off the same part of the town, i.e. the promenade. And I can think of markets in Canberra, markets in the Strand, markets in the High Street. I think it'd be a real bonus to take these markets around. And I also hope that we will have more control, that we don't get competition right outside a particular shop with one particular trader. So I think this gives an opportunity to save all the time on the bureaucracy of licensing, but actually take a better look at how we actually manage our markets going forward for the benefit of everybody.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to contribute to the debate? If not, Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just to say, crack on, because I think this is a great idea. Let's give our town what it wants, which is the opportunity to have markets, not just in the promenade, but elsewhere too. And what a great bonus for the economy that will be for our town. So thank you.
Would Councillor Telford like to add anything further to the debate? Oh, I beg your pardon.
As much as I am very fond of my colleague, Councillor Telford, I think we're missing an opportunity to say what a great new licensing officer we have. And this is just one efficiency that will help her and her team. And I'm really pleased with her progress so far. We've seen successful and professional application of licensing law. And I hope this is a great help to her. I didn't want to miss an opportunity to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Are there any other councillors who wish to contribute? Can I invite Councillor Telford? You're going to waive your right to reply to the debate. Oops, sorry. Right, if you look at page 24, you have two recommendations which I propose to take together. And are we doing electronic vote or show of hands?
Electronic.
Electronic vote for this. So we shall now open the vote on those two recommendations. And that is overwhelmingly carried with a vote of 32 in favour and 1 abstention. And we wish the Cheltenham Borough Council Markets Bill fair passage through the parliamentary process. Hope it goes well. Right, we now move to item 10, the 2025 Independent Resident Survey results. Report of the leader. Leader.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So, as members will recall, we carry out regular resident surveys. So we had one in 2019, we had one in 22, and we had another one this year. And I'm pleased to say that those results have all now been collated, and to bring you this report really for noting and information. So it really is, the resident surveys are our chance to get a genuinely representative sample of our residents' opinions, and that helps us to measure how our residents are feeling about Cheltenham and the services that this council provides. But this year has an even greater importance as it coincides with local government reorganisation. So it's a well-timed report that tells us about how strongly people identify with Cheltenham, but also how they feel about the services that are important to them. As ever, those results speak for themselves, which you will have all seen in the report. And the services that our Borough Council provides, such as our fantastic parks and gardens and open spaces, they continue to be incredibly valued and liked by our residents. However, we are also reminded of the continued dissatisfaction that people have with our roads and pavements. And with a new administration cabinet member in the County Council, I know that they will be taking a great interest in the findings of our survey, and I look forward to talking with them where and how we and the County Council can work together to seek to make improvements in our highways that will make a difference to our residents. It's also worth acknowledging just what a torrid time this council's actually been through and what it has had to endure since the last survey was completed. So coming out of COVID, we went straight into a cost of living crisis, suffering inflation that posed a huge financial challenge and to this council and all of our residents. And in the last few years as a council, we have had to deliver millions of pounds of savings just to protect those services as best we can and to continue to maintain what is our important place in Cheltenham. But also, what we often, or too often, we forget is just that the increases in our energy bills, as an example alone, for places like Leisure Rat, ran into hundreds of thousands of pounds. And I have to say that in this context, I'm incredibly proud of what our overall satisfaction levels have remained largely consistent since 2019. We might not get to complete another survey before 2028, but that doesn't stop us listening to our residents and what they're telling us now, and that having that opportunity to put things. I'm not saying that, you know, because it's, so what we will look at is using what future we have to make sure that what our residents are telling us is the most important thing, and that we will fight to protect and enhance the local services that those and our residents rely on. It's, you know, there's ebb and flow, but I would encourage councillors to really look at the three, and do a comparison yourselves in as much as, you know, where we were in 2019 and the level of satisfaction. 2022, because of COVID, it was different. So the better comparator is between 2019 and 2025, and it's pretty stable. There's always room for improvement, which is what we ask our residents to tell us, just to make sure that people, you know, within the report you have seen the number of people that responded online, because we offered that facility. But in order to get quantitative data or qualitative data, we were very specific in the number of phone calls that we made to make sure that we had a proper, what I call cross-section representative survey of all of our residents between 16 and seniors. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Leader. Are there any questions to the Leader on this item? No. In that case... Oh, sorry, Councillor Chelin, beg your pardon.
Sorry, yes, thank you. Actually, one of them was an observation, but one of them was a question. So the observation was, if this is being published more broadly, would it be possible, please, to indicate what are the north, west, east, and, you know, the sections of Cheltenham that are referred to? And there's a lot of comparison between southwest Cheltenham, northwest Cheltenham, etc. But is there an indication of which wards are in which of those areas? Would that be possible?
I think I can answer that in as much as, so to get that qualitative data, what you have to do is make sure that you get the demographics, so age and place. So every ward in Cheltenham, I don't know whether it's every ward or it's 95%, but to get that qualitative data, that you must make those contacts and ask exactly the same questions of those residents in age. I don't know whether that answers your question, Councillor Chelin. The answer is can I give you how many calls were made in West Cheltenham? Not now. I can ask the question and come back to you if that is the question.
Councillor Chelin, do you want to come back briefly?
Yeah, sorry. I think it's just me being ignorant, really. In the outcomes, in the results, there are comparisons between certain areas of Cheltenham, which are referred to as southwest or northwest or southeast. And I'm just just to be clear, for example, Lansdowne, which one is that in? Do you see what I mean? Because I don't think the two are hooked up in the presentation. Sorry.
I'm with you now. Sorry to play catch up. Yes, it is. It is done by, so it isn't done by ward. It's not listed by ward, as you rightly say. I actually don't know whether that can come because we got a company called Adventure to do it, and I would need to go back to the officer that was leading on that to actually ask that specific question is, can they tell me how many calls were made in each ward, which is basically what you want to know, whether Lansdowne sits in where it sits within the narrative that's in the report. So I'll do that.
Yes, Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Are the results of this survey, I'm assuming the answer is yes, shared with Gloucestershire County Council for the relevant parts? Because one of the things that's mentioned is Swindon Road Household Recycling Centre, and obviously that's under review by Gloucestershire County Council. But also one of the things that comes up both in this report and on the doorstep is our roads, potholes. This isn't our council, So I was just wondering if those parts were shared with Gloucestershire and fed back into their plans.
I think, as I said in my introduction, I'm looking forward to actually sharing that, and it needs to come to this council first, in my opinion, and then, but yeah, absolutely, because there's no point in doing it, and we did it quite in the way that we asked the questions as well, and I welcome the fact that actually we've got an opportunity with the county council to work together much better, but absolutely.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, then we move to debate. The recommendations are on page 58 of your papers, and there are 4 of them. Are there any speeches for or against those recommendations? Don't all rush at once. No? Oh, sorry. Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just to point that I found it extremely insightful to see that over 80% of Cheltenham's residents think it's important to be represented by a local council and local councillors. And also to note that residents feel that we don't have enough choice in terms of retail options in the town centre. And actually, that is something that I've heard on a number of occasions over the past year when seeking youth voice, in that we need to focus perhaps on attracting more affordable retailers. So I would like to put a shout out to other retailers to consider Cheltenham so that we can improve our range of options, especially also for our young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Yeah, I think we all know we're very lucky indeed to live in such a fabulous town. But I do think that there is a danger sometimes that we get complacent. And that's why it is so important to do these engagement exercises with the public. That's why it's important that we as councillors knock on doors, deliver leaflets so we can get people's responses. We can tell people who we are, who to get in touch with. So this survey, I think, is really important. I think we can learn a lot from it. And of course, the important thing about the survey is to learn from it. Everything isn't hunky-dory. We know that. We live in a really, really challenging economy, world, and there's lots of things that are awfully wrong. And why LGR is top of the agenda for this government is beyond me, frankly. Just referring to the survey, one great thing to come up was that young people are now thinking that Cheltenham is offering them a much greater opportunity to have a career in our town. For so many years, many of our young people, including my 3 children, have all left Cheltenham to pursue a career somewhere else, although one has since come back. And so I think it's great with the Golden Valley and all of the cybersecurity industry that we are going to be promoting and that we're behind driving. That is going to be generating really good quality jobs for so many people in our town for years and years to come. So that is a fantastic bonus. In terms of the HRC, it's not surprising that people express concern about the loss of that. And if we'd had £1 million in the back pocket, we'd have just sorted that one out. But what is great about that is that the new administration at Shire Hall, the Lib Dem administration, took a completely different view to the previous administration. They've opened the door. We're having discussions, and Martin is the cabinet member. We've had some very positive discussions. And for me, certainly, and I think Martin shares the view, Cheltenham needs to have its own HRC as of right. We are the only urban centre in the whole of the county which doesn't have one. We will have one. We will fight tooth and nail to make sure we have one. And the way that the county are doing it, by carrying out a review of all their provision across the county, makes huge sense. I've gone slightly off beam there, but HRC did come up in the survey. And what came up in the survey is, and this is opportune given that we're in the process of setting the municipal offices, is that people do want to see a presence of this council in the town. And I think when we plan going forward, following the sale of these buildings where we're going to go, really important that we maintain that town centre presence. And finally, people have alluded to what they see as the town going downhill in some areas. And I think what they're referring to is litter and graffiti. It is the bane of my life. It is the bane of all our lives. Graffiti appears everywhere, and it is such a depressing impact. The bid did a great job on clearing it in the town centre area. But, you know, until we start catching and prosecuting these people, we're still going to have graffiti. I've just got some graffiti wipes.
Councillor Baker, I'm going to have to ask you to draw your...
I'm nearly finished. I've just
You're
got
slightly over the 3 minutes that's technically allowed.
Yeah, I've got some graffiti wipes from Ubico, and I'm going to see how good they are. And finally, we have 16 litter picking groups in our town. Fantastic. And I'm hoping that we can work better with them to do even more litter picking, sad as that is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Any other contributions to the debate? Councillor Telford.
I'll be super quick. I wanted to double down on the point on perception that living in Cheltenham helps grow a career, because that's almost doubled in the past 5 years. And I think that's incredible, to be honest. As someone who moved to Cheltenham when they were 17 and chose to stay here, I felt back then there wasn't necessarily, it didn't feel necessarily there were the options. I started my own business because I felt like that was the way forward. Whereas I think now there is options for people to want to stay here. And when we're looking at young people and we're looking at people who've got a good education at the university and all those kind of things, we want them to stay in Cheltenham. We want them to support our economy, and that's really, really important. But I also think one of the key things to point out in there is that when people are asked where they're from, they say they are from Cheltenham. People are clearly proud to be from Cheltenham, and I think that's really, really important thing to take away. Thank you.
That's a very positive note to finish the debate on, and super quick, as you promised. Councillor Hay, would you like to respond to this debate?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, if I just a couple of points, and thank you for actually, I know how busy we all are and how many papers are put before us, not least this council meeting, which is, I'm not quite sure, 7, 8, 950 pages just on LGR without the other two lots of papers that we've had to read. So it's a huge amount, but I think one of the things for me, I just would like to finish on, Councillor Telford picked up on what I would say would be my closing remark on it really is that in the context of LGR and, some of the questions that I was asked today, it is about place and where your heart is and who you are. When you talk to people, where do you come from? Cheltenham. Oh, that's where the races is. Oh, I came to the festival there. It is Cheltenham, and people in Bishop's Cleeve identify with Cheltenham. I'm old-fashioned enough, if you like, to sometimes think, oh, I live in one of the first areas of the general improvement area. So although I'm in Pittville, to me, I'm in Fairview, and Fairview's in Cheltenham. I'm in Gloucestershire, but my place is Cheltenham. And that's just we all value the places and spaces that we live in. I mean, somebody in Leeds will tell you that that's the best city ever, and or Manchester. But then that's where we make our choices, is to make our lives largely. Not always, because sometimes job necessitates. So I hope the next council finds this useful. I mean, we'll find it useful now, but in terms moving forward, I'm hoping that whatever council comes next, that they will be able to look at it, because nobody will know Cheltenham as well as we and our residents do. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Right, the recommendations on page 58 are 4. They're to acknowledge the survey results, to use them to inform the future delivery of council services, to communicate them to council's partners where further improvement has been identified, and to repeat the survey in 4 years' time. I will take those 4 recommendations together unless anyone disagrees. So could you please vote for or against or abstain using the electronic voting system now? Thank you. That is unanimously carried. Thank you very much indeed, colleagues. Right, we move to the main event. Item 11, local government reorganisation, business case submission. Report of the Leader. Leader.
So, I don't know what, I was looking for a green button. Anyway, okay. I mean, it's over the past few months, I have spent many hours and days alongside my fellow leaders within the county and the Chief Executive to debate, discuss and develop the hundreds of pages of local government business cases that sit in the papers today. It has been an absolutely Herculean effort to generate the information and the detail that the government has requested. I have to say, it has served as an unwelcome distraction, taking time away from focusing on delivering for our residents. But make no mistake, while the government will tell you what they want you locally, that they want locally led proposals to come forward for creating unitary authorities in Gloucestershire, this is being done to us. We didn't ask for it. So we've played the game, we will continue to play the game and do what we can. So we didn't want reorganisation in the first place, and we are actually not in control of that decision on our future either. But yet again, this government will decide what shape local government will take. And this is somewhat ironic for me, because we have no control over the process or the decision on something that is badged as giving us greater powers. But even though the government is in control, I still believe that it is my role to fight for what I believe is in the best interests of our residents and businesses. And from the start, I have tried to make sure that Cheltenham's voice has been heard, and I continue to advocate for what I passionately believe will be the best option for our town. Whatever the outcome of LGR, I will continue to work in partnership to try and deliver the best for our town within the collaborative way that we have done that. You work in collaboration, but it has to be said that you can't do that without some, lost the word now, but where you have to compromise and think that, okay, well, where really is my red line? Where will I stop? Where will I actually say no? How much? So, collaboration only works when you are prepared to compromise. So I could take my time in introducing this to try and highlight the key points of the hundreds of pages of business cases, which you will find in the appendices. But I'm not going to do that. We have had all had time to read over the last few weeks. But what I'm going to do today is speak actually from the heart, from the core of my very liberal values as to why I believe having 2 East and West unitaries for Gloucestershire is the best option for Cheltenham and our county. In some of the debates about LGR so far, I have heard people talk about the facts set out in the business cases. I've also heard arguments about how a big single council for Gloucestershire will still deliver local powers and influence in communities in the same way a smaller council will. On the first point, I can tell you that these business cases, they're not a statement of fact. They are a subjective composition of opinion underpinned by a series of financial assumptions. All you have to do is look at the options appraisal contained in the Gloucester City business, who used all of the same data that we used. And yet that proposal is incredibly different, and the assumptions they have made are completely different to either of the other two going forward. That just shows you how different and subjective the options appraisal is. And yet that proposal, subject to approval by Cabinet in Gloucester City, will be included along with the others for consultation and decision by the government. Second, whilst I have no doubt that a big council can try and make sure that local forums of residents and networks of parish councils can try and mitigate the loss of local district councils, my question is why take that risk? If we are all true to our fundamental liberal beliefs, we should always aim for the most power at the lowest level. And on this measure, there can only be one choice for Gloucestershire, would be 2 unitaries. The maths are simple. In a future East Gloucestershire, almost half of the councillors will represent Cheltenham. In 1 unitary, it will be a mere 25% of councillors, and only 1/4 of the members being able to put the case for our town. Quite simply for me, a big council results in a dilution of the power and influence, and this is a choice that I personally, in all conscience, cannot make. And the dilution of Cheltenham, its culture, its festivals, the investment in place, and everything we hold dear is something I will never support. I will work with, because it's not our decision. So what comes next, I will work with. But more than that, we currently have an urban-centred, rural blind government who are hostile to parish and town councils and who want to reduce their power to neighbourhood talking shops with no power to create change. And that brings me on to the detail of the options appraisal that compares a single and east-west unitary. We need to remember this is a top-down, civil servant-led, artificial construct based on population, size and service delivery assumptions that try and boil down the creation of new councils to some sort of technical procurement exercise. And whilst I have played my own part in working as hard as I possibly can to make our case, no civil servant can override my own knowledge of my ward built up over 3 decades that I've served it from talking to my residents. And I choose this experience to drive my decision on our future rather than on an MHCLG framework, which is why I have always and will continue to support 2 unitaries for Gloucestershire. Although our current 2-tier system of government has its flaws, it works because it recognises the huge diversity of place we have across our county. It can flex to the vast differences we have from Colford to Cheltenham to Cinderford and Cirencester. And it delivers truly local politicians with real power to shape place. And whatever option we choose, it will deliver councils many times bigger than the one we have now. But faced with that choice, what choice we have, I believe we must always choose the smallest viable options available to us to ensure that decision-making and power remains as close to our residents as it possibly can. So I've delivered to you an introduction that is much more personal than I would normally do, because I think fundamentally I felt that I had the mandate of council to go and fight the corner for 2. So I'm now presenting to you all that fight, and I look forward to the debate today. What we have actually is a once in a generation moment for our residents. Not 3 years of government, not 5 years of government, but the changes for the next 50 years. And all local government options developed for Gloucestershire are as imperfect as the business cases that describe them, which is why I remain of the strongest possible belief that we must choose power and influence at the most local level, an east-west unitary for Gloucestershire. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm just going to explain the process we're going to go through. As ever, there will be questions to the Leader and then debate. And we'll then, by my count, have 4 votes. The first one will be on the recommendations in the report, which basically suggest holding advisory votes on the 3 options in turn. Assuming that passes, and after all this effort, I hope it does, there will then be 3 votes, 1 for and against the first option, for and against the second option, and for and against the third option. You could, in theory, vote in favour of all 3, but let me remind you, this is a recorded vote, and you would look a little silly if you did that. So we'll take each of those 3 votes, and then those votes will be advisory votes to the Cabinet, who will then make a submission, and that, in turn, will only be advisory to government, and it will be government who ultimately make this decision. And I would say I'm going to reserve my own comments on the options until the end, as I'm not supposed to steer the debate from the chair. But I would just say that I am astonished that government ministers sitting in Whitehall had so few problems to sort out at national and international level that they thought it was a great idea to impose reorganisation on nearly 200 local councils across the country all at once and create this process. But anyway, right. Are there questions to the Leader on the report she has just presented? No questions? Right, in that case, we move straight to debate on either the recommendations or the options. Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I support the consolidation of the current 2-tier model for 2 main reasons: ease of resident understanding to seek support and the overall operational efficiencies. However, when it comes to population sizes proposed by government, a one-size-fits-all approach does not work at all, especially large rural areas with multiple urban areas like Cheltenham and Gloucester, and the many local identities spanning huge areas of land, like in Gloucestershire. Possible financial savings should not be the only driver to determine the most appropriate long-term combined authority model for Gloucestershire, especially when you consider the local identities and local governance and decision-making structures. Our resident survey proves over 80% of Cheltenham residents feel it's important they are represented by a local council and local councillors, which hands down supports a 2UA model, where decisions are made on our behalf will be far more central to our collective local needs and will have greater say as to how those statutory and non-statutory services are funded and delivered. It's important to note that in hard times such as now, our statutory services that Cheltenham significantly benefits from are always cut first. Imagine that under a 1UA model, where all 6 district areas are fighting from the same pot of money for their own needs to be prioritised. Such services that improve community well-being, the local economy and local environment. Think public assets, parks and gardens, campaigns like No Child Left Behind, community, cultural and sporting activity, grants and discretionary housing services. I would also like to point out the significant impact with the proposed reduction of councillor representation per division from a possible 5 down to just 2. Having significant knowledge spreading both county and district functions and accountabilities will be enormous, especially in a 1UA Gloucestershire-wide model. As such, I have huge concerns that, coupled with a significant reduction of councillor representation, it will create a significant barrier to anyone of working age being able to commit the required hours to deliver on behalf of the communities we serve. The proposed changes do not support inclusive representation focus across various groups, especially in a 1UA scenario. A 2UA approach, yes, it will be harder, but I fear impossible for a 1UA unless someone is financially able to give up their day job. The Greater Gloucestershire proposal recognises the many benefits of smaller population sizes across its themes, but does not equally address the huge population size of the outer edge of the donut, or the fact it is not the only large urban area in Gloucestershire. I also do not agree with, and I know I am not alone in saying, the weighting of the pros and cons comparing a 1UA against a 2UA based on the various assumptions, as that's what they are at this stage, are unfairly biased towards a single unitary model. As such, I will only be voting in favour of a 2 unitary authority UA East-West Gloucestershire model. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atherton. This is a very, very important debate, and obviously people have very strong views. I would still try to get people to stick to their 3-minute limit. Councillor Telford.
You know I can speak quickly, so we'll try and rattle this out. I was elected to represent the residents of All Saints, and therefore, as all of us, Cheltenham as a whole, and that is my priority. So it goes without saying that the idea of LGR doesn't sit right with me at all. I think this change further distances local people from decision-making and removes a layer of democracy and autonomy. There are benefits, of course, but overall I think this is a forced step away from local decisions for local people. With that in mind, I think we owe it to our residents to fight for the best solution for them in all of this. And it is clear to me that a single unitary authority solution does not support them in the ways 2 unitary authorities of East-West would. One council trying to deliver services to over 650,000 people with such varying circumstances and lives is not practical nor logical. This is not a single metropolitan area, it is a county with multiple urban areas, but many more rural. Even looking at our biggest centres, Cheltenham and Gloucester, we have distinct identities, economies. Then on a rural scale, the town I grew up in Fairford, is distinctly different from villages in the Forest of Dean. There are different challenges, different experiences, and different ways forward to help people. Before I joined the council, and since I've been here, I've always been amazed at the sheer amount of both statutory and discretionary services that are delivered in the small budget that there is. And that's down to the administration, but more importantly, it's actually down to all the officers here who work hard and care deeply about our town. When I think of Cheltenham, I think of our award-winning parks and gardens, of our vibrant cultural offer, festivals and architecture, of our town centre that we're facing the same challenges as nationally, continues to punch above its weight. These are fundamental parts of our town and are supported because Cheltenham Borough Council cares to do it. I think it is a fallacy to believe a council representing 6 times the population would maintain the same care for our town that a smaller council does and can. It could not. It would be too removed from it, have too much responsibility spread thin elsewhere. And I know there is an argument that you wouldn't want to split up existing highways or other county-wide responsibilities, but look at that resident survey earlier and tell me those things are working for us. They're not. They're improving under the new administration, and this is not a slight on the hard-working officers at the county, but it's just too substantial an authority size and too removed from people's lives. Simply on highways, there are so many roads, pavements, cycleways across urban and rural areas in our county, too many of them to have tailored and appropriate care, and we see that day to day when we knock on doors and speak to people. And we've already worked successfully cross-boundary with things like the LVET for tourism and Ubico serving all of Gloucestershire in various different ways, and West Oxfordshire too. So we can do that even with 2 unitary authorities. And this argument is without taking into account South Gloucestershire, a unitary of 300,000 people that is part of Gloucestershire and already exists separately. So having a north, east, a west, and a south is 3 unitaries in an area. It's quite frankly logical. They'd all have the same representation, and this has got to be better for equity for everyone. No solution is perfect. In fact, the current setup of councils isn't perfect, and we can see that not everything works as it should do, and there's ways we can improve. But I know damn well that 2 unitary authorities can better protect our town, our residents' interests, and their futures, and provide something for them and all residents of Gloucestershire that isn't just cost savings. And one last point, I hope the people that were here in the gallery earlier to ask questions on LGR will tune in online to hear the arguments that are presented today, because I think it's really important to hear all the sides of this. And actually, it's not about politics, it's about what we can do for our residents and looking after their interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Telford. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who's been involved in writing up these proposals. When I opened the agenda pack for today's meeting and saw the page count at nearly 1,000, I did have a minor panic. But the reality is that this is being pushed by central government, and we could have grumped about it, which I think we all have, and then done nothing, and we certainly have not done that. This is a once-in-a-generation shake-up to local government, and the briefings on all of the content in this report in the last couple of months have made this agenda so much more digestible. So I just want to say thank you to everyone involved in the delivery of those sessions also. It's clear that this has all been very thoroughly researched. My first thought is that the single unitary option is the only option that sticks to the local government reorganisation white paper ask that the council be 500,000 and above, with the 2 unitary being 310 and 348. The Greater Gloucestershire model takes this a step further, with the unitaries being 180,000 and approximately 530,000, which takes the 1 unitary under the minimum threshold. Regardless of the exceptions that can be made, the 180,000 would be a very small unitary and feels not in the spirit of what the government wanted out of reorganisation. The benefits in my mind around having 2 unitary authorities would have been that there would have been more councillors per resident. But looking at the proposals for both the east-west split and the single unitary, there are 110 councillors, which reduces the councillors per resident compared to now, but equally for both options. So whichever choice is made, there is no impact on the number of representatives per resident. Even though the east-west split is an improvement in terms of percentage of Cheltenham representation in the chamber, it doesn't change the workload of a councillor or the ability a resident has to contact their local representative if they don't get a response. The report for the east-west split talks extensively about identity of all of the areas of Gloucestershire and how they're all their own places. I don't think that a split or single unitary seeks to change that. I think our identity sits with our people, and regardless of what the outcome is, I strongly believe that we will maintain our regional identities regardless of whether we're from Cirencester or Cheltenham. I also think that we all have different regional identities, even within Cheltenham. Someone in Hester's Way probably identifies a little bit differently to someone from Charlton Park, for example. Taking all of this into account, I think pooling together all of our resources together in Gloucestershire into a single unitary will allow us to deliver services more centrally with a single centre of expertise, to have all of our expertise in one place and allow that networking of expertise across all of our districts and boroughs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Boyes.
Oh, that's not me. That's me. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd first like to say thank you for the very extensive report and all the time given by officers and leaders from across Gloucestershire in providing reports, papers and the many information sessions to members. I am wholeheartedly against this form of local government reorganisation. This is not about efficiencies or what is best for the taxpayer. This is a blatant power grab from the Labour government and about what is best for the Labour Party. This is politicking at its worst, and it is costing a vast amount of time from officers and members and a vast amount of taxpayers' money. This proposed reorganisation wipes out a vital layer of democracy from our political system, a layer of democracy that is closest to the citizen. It pushes those democratically elected by the citizen further from them, making our country much less democratic in the process. I'm not convinced that larger necessarily means better or more efficient. There are many examples across the country where smaller can be successful. I'm concerned that Cheltenham stands to lose 150 years of strong local democracy. It has built up strong relations with its citizens, organisations, businesses and partner towns. I don't want to see that lost by pushing elected members further away and lost in a large unitary. I believe the best option is the most local option, which is the two-unitary option. I believe better services can be delivered by an authority that's closest to the citizen and as close to the community that they serve, especially, but not limited to, matters such as licensing, planning and tackling the climate emergency. The report itself highlights how district councils across Gloucestershire are leading bold, community-driven innovation, and I don't want to see that lost. What I was happy to see in the report was the designing of two strong, focused councils championing local priorities with real opportunities for children and young people to share their views and help shape the decisions that affect them. I'm mindful that we don't have any official youth voices here in the chamber today to be involved in a decision that will impact their futures. I've been vocal for many years about the youth voice and youth representation, and I look forward to seeing more of that as this reorganisation develops. In conclusion, I believe in stronger local democracy for local citizens, and although I don't think this reorganisation is the answer, I will be happy to get behind whatever the outcome is for Cheltenham to make it work for our residents. I know our hands are tied and the Minister will be the one making the decision. We didn't ask for this, but must be done correctly, protecting what makes each part of Gloucestershire special and build a future where we can all flourish. I believe the best possible outcome in order to hold on to a strong local democracy would be the two-unitary option with two distinct authorities to provide balance, scale and localism with decisions made as close to citizens as possible, and that's how I'll be voting today. Thanks.
Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm not going to repeat what other colleagues have said. I'd like to put this really into a particular context. But before I do, can I just say thank you to the leader. I know how much time you've spent on this, and to officers for all the work that you have done. It has been tremendous. I'd like you to imagine a spark. A spark. Something you might get on bonfire night. And I'd like you to imagine that that spark sets something on fire. And that fire burns brightly, so brightly, it actually goes into a bonfire and makes a huge, huge difference to the area in which you find it. Now, the spark was lit by Councillor Jeffries. Yeah, your fault. And it was the spark that said to him, do you know what? The youngest child to be excluded from school in Gloucestershire was in Cheltenham. Officers at county level, oh yes, we know. Councillor Jeffries, that shouldn't be the case, that shouldn't happen. So he came to the cabinet and we discussed it. And we decided we'd do something about it. And what we did was to light a fire. And that fire was No Child Left Behind. The county could have done it, but didn't. Then we began to involve people from outside. And now, as you will know, Councillor Atherstone, there are some 113 organisations in Cheltenham working to help those children. And you know what? Do you know how many children have been helped? With everything from school uniform to a computer during COVID. Do you know how many? over 7,000. You put that in the context of Cheltenham and the county. The county could have done it, but you know what? It was too far removed from the local community, from the local area, from the local council. Far, far, far too far removed. And so what we have is a situation now where we're going to be told, I'm awfully sorry, this is going to change. You're going to have a unitary possibly, or you're going to have a Greater Gloucestershire and another bit outside it. No. The whole point of local government is that it's local. And so what we want is to have local government for Cheltenham and for Tewkesbury, because my ward is very close actually to Bishopsgate, which we all know is in Tewkesbury. So we work together, and Cotswold follows on. And that would be a great organisation to have, because we know each other. We already work together. We already do things together. And so I would like to see that as the basis for what we are doing moving forward. And that means we have to have 2 unitaries, not 1. And so for me, 2 unitaries is the answer. It gives local people a voice. It gives local councillors an opportunity to work with local people, and it means that we can, for the first time potentially, have something which will drive forward a new view of our area, our county, which would be 2 unitaries that would work together on something.
Councillor
2
Clucas,
unitaries which
you have
would
to draw
the
your
local
remarks to a
voice.
close.
And that, I think, is the best thing for this town and its people.
Thank you, Councillor Clucas, and I would urge people to try to stick to the 3-minute limit. Councillor Lynch.
Thank you. Thank you to my colleague, Councillor Alfredson, as well, who mentioned about the representation could shrink from 5 councillors to 2, which really concerns me. I got into this role to represent. I might be pale, I might be male. I like to think I'm not stale. I think I represent some very lost voices around Cheltenham. I've been a social worker here, I still am. I've been a student at the University of Gloucestershire, just got my PhD. The way this is going, we're going to have fewer councillors with a much higher workload. We risk pushing out people who really don't have that capacity. I myself am a carer as well, and I'm really concerned that no matter which way we go with this unitary local government reform, we're going to lose some potentially good councillors. And so basically, I absolutely condemn this central government for putting us in this position in the first place.
Thank you very much. Admirably succinct. Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Firstly, I think a couple of colleagues have already mentioned that. I'd like to thank the leader and the exec team, put on record my thanks to them for what has been a gargantuan amount of work. We've seen the thousands of pages of documents, but actually all the work that's gone into it over the months and months and months. And they didn't need to do it, you know, but for Cheltenham, they've done it. So thank you. I'd like really thank you for that. I started being a councillor, and we had austerity. And we organised this, and we organised that, and we changed this, we changed that, and the money got tighter. And basically, the Conservative Party took all the money away. And here we are now, after surviving all of that, and we got the Labour Party. They're going to take our representation away. It doesn't beg the question, actually, where it's going to stop. You know, where we all go. I'm a Liberal, as Hay mentioned. I live by my values. Representation at the lowest level, maximum representation. Because what we've seen, as this council's taking decisions across Cheltenham, are wonderfully Cheltenham things. And I just fear that actually dilution of this democracy through this reorganisation is going to just dilute Cheltenham. So I fundamentally disagree with the local government reorganisation that the Labour Party are proposing. But if we have to work with it, then it has to be 2 unitaries. It has to be, to get the maximum amount of representation. That's my fundamental view. I could go into lots of other things and talk about lots of other things. I will just say, on a gentleman who's not with us today, I've had lots of conversations with him over the weeks and months when it comes to finances, and she's made to reference those conversations and those figures. And the one thing he said to me, which really sticks home, is bigger and better. And I know that because in my time in this chamber, the good things I've seen go across the county are pretty much Liberal-led. The bad things have been Conservative-led. I've seen failing child services, failing bus services, failing road services. Oh, look, that's at the big county council. All the wonderful things that I cherish about Cheltenham have come from a small representative town council or representative district council. So I firmly believe that 2 unitaries is the least worst option. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffreys. Councillor Chelin.
Thank you. I'm just going to speak for a very short time, but really to thank everybody for the fantastic amount of work that's gone into this. And it feels like such an opportunity cost, and it will continue to be an opportunity cost as we work through it. But we are where we are, as people have said. I think thinking about the arguments in all different directions, I have been pulled in various different ways, but I think it's the issue of representation that has been a clincher for me, and that's representation that's typical, isn't it? Representation at two levels. Representation within a 2 unitary, the fact that 54% of councillors will be will be representing Cheltenham, as opposed to 25% of them representing Cheltenham in a 1 unitary. And the other thing is representation at the other level, the fact that we have 2 Gloucestershires bidding for funding or their voices being heard in Parliament and working with partners across nationally and regionally. So representation from downwards and upwards, if you like, I think are very persuasive arguments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barrell. Councillor Chelin, can you turn off? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Barrell.
Thank you very much. I've got to begin, as everyone has, by saying thank you for all the work that's gone into this. Oh, wow, what a lot of information there is in all these documents, and there's just no way that you can take it all on, well, personally, that I can take it all on board. So I thought, well, I just want to think very personally as to why do I, as a councillor, so passionately believe that a 2 unitary choice is much better than any of the others that have been put forward. And to me, the most important thing is relationships, people, relationships with our residents, and a feeling that I actually can understand the problems that the residents are putting before me, and that I can actually do something about it, and do something about it. If I'm going to take decisions and feed into decisions and take actions, it needs to be taken near to home as possible. There needs to be the connection and the identity. And that's what's missing when we get the great, big, large authorities trying to do things. We're a huge county, Gloucestershire, with very, very different needs. The needs of Cheltenham and the surrounding rural areas are completely different, as everyone's been saying, from the needs of Gloucester and the surrounding areas. All important, but all very different and needing different solutions. And for me, the 2-centre model is the only one which is going to work best in the long term. We must think of our residents and how we can best serve them. And that's my feeling about it all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barrell. And Councillor Pinniger.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to try and talk to Councillor Davies and her colleagues to address the points that you made that seemed to indicate that you wouldn't be supporting 2 unitary authorities, and hoping that I can talk you around. That's the point of a debate. So you noted that people would be represented by the same number of councillors in the 1 UA or 2 UA. But I believe that is just temporary. So in the 2 UA, there would be 52 councillors, which is well below the government limit of 100. Whereas in the single unitary authority, there'd be 110. then a boundary review, which would bring it down to maybe 60, 70 councillors. So in the longer term, there would be far fewer councillors in a single unitary authority. The next thing is the size of the unitary authorities. There's there's no proof that 500,000 or above is of any value whatsoever. In fact, the District Councils Association found a slightly negative correlation with outcomes as authorities became larger. So, you know, I think we'd be around 2 unitaries. For the 2 unitary model, would be around 350 in each unitary, so which is a good size. And then everybody's talking about representation, and I agree with all those points. But nobody seemed to mention officers. So, well, apart from we'd have this pooling of experts in one centre of excellence. But actually, I think we need to step back and look at the scale. 350,000 is a very large scale council. And I think there's enough capacity to have experts in both councils. Plus, if you have a single expert, and we know that there will always be budget cuts, in a very large authority, they'll be able to give half the time and attention to the very serious cases that come before them. So actually, do we want to double up at that kind of scale? Adult services, children's services, the senior people need to be able to give the focus to those individual cases. Those are the 3 points I wanted to make to address some of the points you made. And hopefully you can vote with us with me on the 2 unitaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Finnegar. Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. As this is my maiden speech, I'd like to begin by expressing what a privilege it is to stand here today representing the people of Charlton Kings and contributing to the future of this borough that we all so care so deeply about. This afternoon's debate on unitary options is an important one, perhaps one of the most significant decisions we will face during this administration. And yet what has struck me most in recent months is how poorly understood this issue is by so many residents. Frankly, I'm really not surprised. When I stood as a candidate just last year, I had never heard of any of these proposals. And I didn't think of myself as someone who was really badly informed. I mean, perhaps I am, but that was my view. If this is the level of change that we can catch even candidates unaware, what chance is it that our residents have? That to me says something important about how central government introduces sweeping reforms. Too often they are imposed from above with little evidence that they are wanted or even understood by the electorate. Local people value local government precisely because it is local. When you call up the planning department, you want an officer who knows your street, who understands the quirks of your neighbourhood and who can offer advice rooted in lived knowledge. That sense of place, of familiarity, of community, these things matter to people. They shape trust. The briefings many of us have attended on the unitary proposals have focused heavily on efficiency savings. But efficiency is not a mandate for better services. Saving money alone cannot be the justification for reducing democratic representation or weakening the local connection that residents rely on. I remain unconvinced that moving to a single county-wide unitary or any centralised model will meaningfully improve outcomes for the people of Cheltenham. I also worry that underpinning some of this thinking sits a broader and largely unspoken national agenda around automation and AI. Now, I am not anti-technology. AI has many remarkable capabilities. It can help us streamline processes and improve back-office efficiency. But what it cannot do, and what it must never be allowed to do, is replace the value of people. As councillors, we must champion structures that provide as many local jobs, local roles, and local opportunities as possible. People need purpose. They need connection, and no algorithm, however impressive, can replicate the reassurance of speaking with a human who understands your community because they belong to it too.
So I want to commend the leader of the council, the cabinet, and our officers for navigating what has been an incredibly complex and sensitive process. Their leadership and transparency throughout have been invaluable, and I am grateful for the clarity that they have brought to a deeply technical and often confusing debate. And that is why, after careful reflection, I am supportive of the two unitary model they are proposing. It is not perfect, no model ever is, but it is the closest option to preserving the high degree of local representation and local knowledge that our current system provides. It keeps decision-making closer to communities, it maintains a stronger sense of place, and it respects the principle that services should feel local to the people who use them. Deputy Mayor, colleagues, this is a moment where we must choose not just a structure, but a philosophy of local government, one that values people over systems, community over consolidation, and representation over remote efficiency. I believe the two unitary option best reflects those values, and I am pleased to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy, and I hope colleagues will forgive me for allowing a slightly longer speech than normal for such an eloquent maiden speech. Slightly less maiden, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think the council understands where I stand in my beliefs, and I'm beginning to think that this is going down that line of being bureaucracy going mental. I came to Cheltenham 50 odd years ago from not too far away, and I class myself as a Cheltenham person. Enjoy being in Cheltenham, and I look at what they're trying to do is split a wonderful county into a disaster, because I can't see anything other than having a U2 unit as the only way going forward. So I will be voting for a 2 system, because I think it's going to protect Cheltenham from becoming disconnected with our people we represent. You know, we represent a lot of people in this town, and they look on us to look at their best interests. And I think we need to look at their best interests and not other people's best interests. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Are there any other... Oh, yes. Councillor Lewis, and then Councillor Bamford. And then Councillor Orme.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Your microphone is still on, Martin. Forgive me. I don't know if you're going to cut in or... I thought he was going to cut me off. That would be a great idea. I'm working to 3 minutes. I'm going to stick to it. So when you're young in politics, one of the things that always comes up time and time again is people come up to you and go, oh, when are you going to be an MP? As if being an MP is like the highest form of good. And while there is a former MP in this room, I do still think that local government is the best form of government. I fell in love with it when I was 18, and through all the ups and downs, I remained utterly besotted with it ever since. I love the deep human connection, the friends that you make on doorsteps across town, the lives that you get small snippets of, and the ability to step into people's lives, often at some of the worst periods of their life, and take some of the weight off of people's shoulders. It's already really tough to connect with people personally. The residents of Oakley at the moment are being subjected to my terrible jokes about my extended summer tour because of just how long it has taken to really take the time to knock on every single door and have real conversations with every last person. I'm going out every single week, twice some weeks, and I'm still working those numbers up. The idea of trying to have that real personal connection in awards twice as big or bigger still is simply unattainable alongside doing the real work of being a councillor and solving people's problems. That is the exclusive purview, quite frankly, of the retired and the wealthy. Each and every person in Cheltenham needs that deep personal connection. more so at times of crisis, whether it's emergency housing problems or access to healthcare. They cannot be reduced to a number on a list that is simply too long to get around to. Like the Beeching Review before it, this government is hacking away at the connections that keep our country moving, that allow us to drive local investment, like the Golden Valley, that's delivering millions of pounds of investment in public services and creating new jobs and new opportunities in a way that a private sector company simply could not replicate. It's going to kill local growth, kill local connection, and kills local government in any sense of the word. This early in the year, I also resent the pantomime that we've all been drafted into. This decision will ultimately be made by a civil servant off in Whitehall based on criteria they have decided is the right option for Gloucestershire. Yet hours upon hours of my time, of your time, of council officers' times, of the government's time are being absorbed into this scheme. And we live in a country where children starve in homes full of black mould and pensioners die on floors in hospital. This is an unacceptable use of the government's time, of our time, of anyone's time. We have years, if that, to deliver real change for real people, because the alternative, quite frankly, is an era of desperate, miserable divide and conquer politics and Nigel Farage in number 10. The famous line from Christmas Pantos is, "He's behind you." That hardly applies to Mr. Starmer's front bench these days. It's beyond me that this, of all things, was the priority of this government. And quite frankly, I think if there's any reorganisation that needs to happen in government, it needs to happen in number 10.
Passionately put. Councillor Bamford.
Well, on a completely different tone. I refer you to page 206 of the report. Right-sized local government. Okay. The indication here is that 650,000 as the proposed population of one unitary authority is the right size. That has been given the green light by PricewaterhouseCoopers. The two unitary proposals have been given an amber in this context. Now, I'm old enough to remember that unitaries have been around for an awful long time, and I'm also old enough to remember that when they came into being, there was a considerable amount of thought given to the appropriate size of those unitary authorities. And as I remember it, that figure was approximately 250,000. Quite where 500,000 has come from, God only knows. I think it does not balance democracy against potential scale appropriately at all. But my views aside, those were very carefully considered reasons for coming up with that 250,000. I don't think there's a similar background for the 500,000. Now, in that context, yes, I can see over time population has grown. 300,000, 350,000 is quite a sensible sort of size. The 650 going up to 700,000 is nearly 3 times that size that was originally considered. It's much too big for a local authority. So that's my main point. And I will raise one other thing about Paul's feelings. I think it's a hell of a lot stronger than a feeling. I think there's a very, very strong financial case that 2 unitaries are much stronger than 1. I was involved when the health world moved from a two unitary concept to a single unitary concept. And one of the strong drivers for that was that there would be a financial gain from it. I could bore you for hours, but the reality was the exact opposite happened. It did not work financially, and we could argue about the quality of services till blue in the teeth. But that's the reality was it did not deliver those sorts of economies of scale that I'm afraid interestingly the same. Well, no, they weren't PricewaterhouseCoopers then. They were something slightly different. But anyway, we had a similar sort of report before the trust board saying there would be these efficiencies that would outweigh the 1 unitary versus 2. One health body rather than 2 would deliver a financial gain. It didn't, and I think there's every reason for Paul's feelings to be a little more than just feelings. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Orme.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seems to me the single unitary model appears to be mostly financially driven, especially when you look at its focus on efficiencies. Now, this looks great on paper, but it is very business-like. Now, although some of you in here are successful businessmen, what we all are is local representatives. Now, as local representatives, we care about our residents and giving them a voice. Yep. As I do with my residents in Lansdowne, of course. Now, having looked at the various models, the best way to do this, in my opinion, is with the two unitary authorities, which those voices will make up a higher percentage of the authority and therefore be louder. And that's why I'll be supporting the two unitary authority model.
Thank you very much. Are there any other councillors who wish to contribute to the debate? Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't really going to speak today because everybody says exactly the same things I've been saying, I think. But just one concern, there are several concerns I have about a unitary authority that is centred on Gloucester. And that's the planning side of things. It is such an essential part of what people feel about their town, how it grows, how it's developed, how it's supported by the planning authority. If we are going to have one single planning authority for the whole of Gloucestershire, how are people going to be represented in that authority? I think it is going to be detrimental to a lot of people, and I think we will lose so much by the loss of commitment, connection, by having an authority that isn't going to be local in the end. So I would support a two unitary authority on the basis that we have some more control over it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other councillors who wish to contribute to the debate? In that case, I will have my two penneth. A bit has been talked about the maths of this, that Cheltenham will have a much bigger representation in a smaller unitary authority. But of course, that is true for every single community all the way across Gloucestershire. Every single community will have a louder voice in a smaller unitary authority. And I'm sure that is one of the reasons why so many of the previous county councils across the country that have been down this path before us, Northamptonshire, Bedfordshire, Dorset, Wiltshire, North Yorkshire, Shropshire and more, have all chosen, in the end, to have more than one unitary authority in their area. And of course, in every single one of those cases, they will have started off with an unequal balance in the balance of need, in the finances and so on. But I suspect very few of them will have been as close as the projection of this 20 million surplus or deficit in Gloucestershire, which actually would represent only 2% of the overall turnover of those two unitary authority councils, which is probably within the margin of error on the consultant's spreadsheets, if I'm honest. It is only an estimate. So I think, for me, the answer is two unitary authorities. And I would end by quoting one of my political heroes who wrote a book called Small is Beautiful back in 1974, and who has inspired, I think, actually Green Party politics as much as Liberal Democrat and other politics. And he wrote, "We are generally told that gigantic organisations are inescapably necessary, but there is a tremendous longing and striving to profit, if at all possible, from the convenience, humanity and manageability of smallness. Bigger is not always better." And that's my view. Right, folks, we have 4 votes. So the first is just on the recommendations. Oh, I beg your pardon, Leader. I do beg your pardon. I knew I was going to get something wrong eventually. Leader, would you like to respond to the debate?
I think it would be quite rude if I didn't, even if I don't say very much. And well done, Martin. 3 minutes and well inside that. Yeah, well, there you go, 1 minute 48. But I'm really sorry, I know you do like to have the last word, but just this time, I'm going to have the last word. Well, actually, I'm not. You guys are going to have the last word at the end of the day. I'm not going to go back through and cover off what everybody has said, because in reality, you've all put the arguments that our residents, if they choose, they can clearly hear and see. There was, I think, there's a couple of comments, is that actually the 500k threshold that the government set way back ago in November last year, they have moved. Absolutely. Every local government organisation meeting I've been to nationally, they have moved the goalpost. Whilst they haven't taken it out and changed the number, they've actually said that actually 350, and they'll even look at less than that. So on that basis, all three of the two unitary and the one unitary both meet the threshold of what the government are saying. And I think I just need to, what you've got is 110 councillors. There'll be a referendum, or they will go down to 90. So it'll be 90 councillors for the whole of Gloucestershire, representing, the whole of Gloucestershire. I think that says it all. But I do think there's a couple of things I want to say is that we've all talked about how important the local voice is, but I think it's also important, the message I want to send government is that actually we're not against the changes, but it's actually, let us be involved in those changes. Don't make your decisions based on numbers, base it on people. So this is not about us as a council being against changes, because there are advantages to a unitary. It's just the size of the unitary that matters. So I'm not against the fact that we've got to go through some sort of reorganisation, but it's just think about the numbers of that. Because there's a bit of me that says, it's a short-term gain, if you look at it from a financial aspect, and you're sacrificing a long-term sustainability for that short-term financial gain. And I think, Councillor Hallwood just said £20 million, that's 2% roughly margin of what the budget is. If you think about it, the council tax collection rate that we're really proud of, because I think it's 97.6. I might be a percentage or two. Well, I know it's 97 point something, but I think it's 6. And we're one of the highest. We do really well with our collection. If you go to a massive, huge authority and you've got the potential for that collection rate to drop is when you look at what's happened elsewhere, those places have dropped somewhere in the region, in some places, by 2%, creating millions of pounds loss. So that starts to close the gap of your 20 million. So I think it would be, I knew I wasn't going to get through this without actually saying thank you to a number of people, but not least to Paul Jones, because his challenges in this process, taking on the might and the juggernaut of PwC, just Paul Jones, our amazing 151 finance lead and deputy chief exec, taking on, as I say, that juggernaut of PwC and saying, actually, your figures are wrong. Well, why? Because I don't agree with them. I think they feel wrong. And he reduced that by 16 million by just challenging that. So, and the amount of work that what we've done is through this process. I think my deputy leader said to me, once we get this through, perhaps you can focus more on Cheltenham Borough Council. And it's like, well, I have been focused on Cheltenham Borough Council completely, but I get what he's meaning, because actually I haven't managed to be out in my community as much as I'd like, because this is too important. So, and we're not, whatever happens, we've actually still got a bucket load of work to do. But what we're still doing is delivering on our day job. And we can't do that without, not just the guys who were sat here today, but also those that are not with us and other senior members of the team. And that goes across the county. So I want to say a massive thank you to them, but particularly to Paul, Gareth and Claire. And Anne, and I could go on. So Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm sure we'd all echo that. Right, now we will move to 4 votes. So the first vote is on the recommendations which are on page 145 of your papers, which are to note the various business cases, to enable the advisory votes that will then follow straight afterwards, and to refer the advisory votes to the Cabinet for consideration. So can I, on the electronic voting system, please see all those in favour, against or abstaining on those recommendations? Is there one person who hasn't? No, all there.
Hold on.
Great, thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Just as well. And we now move to 3 votes in succession, 1 on each proposal, and you can vote for, against or abstain on each one. So the first vote is on a single unitary for Gloucestershire as detailed in the business case in Appendix 3. Can I please see all those for or against or abstaining on that, please? And would you like to check on the screen, this is for the record and the history books, that the vote is correctly recorded against your name for the record? Okay, in that case, the final vote, if everyone is correct, is 29 against, 3 for and 2 abstentions, so that vote, that option is defeated. Second vote is for a 2 unitary East and West Gloucestershire as detailed in the business case in Appendix 4. Can I please see all those for, against or abstaining on that, please? Just check that it's right against your name. And that is 30 votes in favour, 2 against and 2 abstentions. So that one is overwhelmingly carried. And then finally, vote 3 for a 2 unitary Greater Gloucester and Gloucestershire as detailed in the business case in Appendix 5. Can I please see all those for, against or abstaining on that, please? And check that it's correct against your name. That is 31 votes against and 3 abstentions, so that is overwhelmingly defeated. Thank you very much. That means that the preferred option of this council is a 2 unitary East and West Gloucestershire as detailed in the business case in Appendix 4. And I would say, colleagues, I've heard quite a lot of debates in various chambers in my time. I think that was a remarkably well-informed and reasonable debate, very reasonable to those with different opinions. And if a future unitary council can deliver debates of that quality and that much reasonableness, but also passion at times and a lot of really incisive knowledge, then it will be doing pretty well. So congratulations to all of you colleagues. Thank you. Right. We now move. There are two further items of business. These were both urgent items. And they were both as a result of very recent advice, which persuaded officers and cabinet members that we had to bring these to this council as a matter of urgency. The first regards delegated planning enforcement powers to Tewkesbury Borough Council for the Golden Valley development. And I'm going to ask Councillor Collins to introduce this report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. When this meeting started, there were loads of people in that public gallery, but they all cleared off. Perhaps it's because this isn't quite as interesting as some of the other business that we've transacted today. But anyway, thank you, Deputy Mayor and colleagues. This important item is a late addition to today's full council agenda. I would like to thank the Deputy Mayor for allowing it at such short notice. The reason for the urgency in bringing this item to you today is due to the timing of the Section 106 negotiations, which are close to being concluded. Originally, it was thought that this could have been just a member decision, so me making it with my cabinet colleagues, but on legal advice, it's transpired that it actually needs to be a full council decision. So that's why it's being brought before us all today. It is largely a procedural issue, so I don't envisage having a massive debate about it, or there being lots of questions, but of course, if anyone does want to speak, then of course they'll be allowed to. I will point out some of the salient points. Cheltenham Borough Council are the landowners, and in question and by law, we are unable to enforce against ourselves. It does make logical sense if you think about it. Tewkesbury Borough Council, however, have confirmed that they do have enforcement capacity, and if it is required, and as you can see in the request, it is also being heard by Tewkesbury Borough Council's full council tomorrow. So, although it's late, it is only a short report, and I hope that you've all had a chance to read it. 10 pages. I think we could all manage that on top of the thousands and other pages that we've all had to read. But given the fact that although today's agenda is relatively short, we've had to do a lot of homework before we came into the chamber today. As you can see, the report is in line with our corporate plan priorities. I would, however, like to draw your attention to section 3.1 of the report, because that basically tells us what we will still be able to do. That's on page 5 of the agenda supplement. This outlines the responsibilities that will remain with us here at Cheltenham Borough Council. I hope that you all are happy with this approach and the contents of the report. However, in all seriousness, if anyone does have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. We do have Tracy Birkinshaw here, Director of Planning and Building Control, and she'll probably be able to answer the more difficult questions if anyone asks them. As you can see, there are 3 recommendations contained within the report on pages 1 and 2 of the agenda supplement, and I hope that you are all able to support them. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the Cabinet Member? Councillor Wheeler.
Try the other one. Yes, I must admit, when I first started reading this report, I thought, why should we be handing over responsibility to Tewkesbury? Then I read the report and understand it. It makes absolute sense. It's a bit like we give chairs of overview and scrutiny to opposition members. My question is actually, I can understand why we are asking Tewkesbury to sort of monitor what we're doing, basically. Is there something similar happening in Tewkesbury to the parcel of land that belongs to them?
Councillor Collins.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I haven't read their agenda for tomorrow, I must admit, so I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if Tracy... No. No, they don't own this. This is just the north and southern parcel. This is the land that we own. Okay, I think understandably you're getting confused with the fact that there's other landowners. Maybe you're getting confused with the Elm Park development. Perhaps I don't know. But okay, but there are other landowners, and some of that land, yes, is in Tewkesbury Borough Council's jurisdiction. But this is specifically for the north and southern parcels that we own ourselves with our partners, HBD. Okay. Sorry, I had to catch up then for a minute, didn't I? Sorry about that.
Okay. Are there any other questions to Councillor Collins? No. In that case, we move to debate. Are there any contributions for or against the recommendations on pages 1 or 2 of the supplement? No. In that case, do you have any further remarks, Councillor Collins, in summing up?
No, I think that's enough. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Great. In that case, using the electronic voting system, would you like to vote on the recommendations on pages 1 and 2 of the supplement? I think that's everyone present. That's unanimously carried amongst those present and voting. Thank you. Right. The second item of urgent business relates to some advice from the Electoral Commission, which has only been made in the last couple of days for understandable reasons. Leader, I think, are you introducing this one? Oh, okay. I'm going to allow Claire Hughes to address the council meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So members will obviously be aware that we started today's meeting with some sad reflection that unfortunately we sadly lost Paul Jones, our Deputy Chief Executive, last week. One of the roles that was held by Paul was held the role of electoral registration officer and returning officer for this council, and I'm sure we all agree he did an amazing job at running the elections over many years. We are due to publish the Register of Elections on the 1st of December this year, and to be able to do that lawfully, we do have to have an electoral registration officer in place to be fully compliant with the Representation of the People Act. We took some advice today from the Electoral Commission about whether we could sort of defer having to make this appointment today with it still being so raw for everybody, but their very clear advice was that we should proceed and ask Council to take an urgent decision to appoint both an electoral registration officer and a returning officer in the case that an election was called at any point. For obvious reasons, we've not had a chance to write a report, but the recommendation to Council is simply that the Chief Executive, Gareth Edmondson, be appointed as electoral registration officer and returning officer for the Borough Council with immediate effect. If anyone's got any questions, I'll do my best to answer them, but otherwise, hopefully we can just go straight and have a vote on that one.
Are there any questions to the Director of Governance? Nope. Okay, in that case, if everyone's agreeable, we will move straight to a vote, and please use the electronic voting system. And that is passed unanimously. Thank you very much, colleagues. It's been quite a long afternoon. I think it was very important to remember our friend and colleague, Paul Jones. I hope he would think that we conducted ourselves well today. I certainly think we did, and particularly on that historic debate on the future of local government. If this does mark the beginning of the end of this council, then I think we've embarked upon it with our heads held high. Thank you very much, colleagues.